Hi there. I'm Drew Blanford with CNU TV, and today we're going to figure out how to ace our midterm exams. If you are looking for a location to start your studying, I would recommend reserving a spot in the library. In order to do that, you go onto the library's website, scroll down to Reserve a Study Room, and then select which room you want. Now that we know how to find a study room, here comes the difficult part. Studying. To first figure out how we study, let's take a second to figure out how the brain works. The brain works and stores information by providing dopamine to neurons. The stronger the neurons are, the more likely you are to remember that information. The more you return to that information, the stronger the neurons get, but because they get more dopamine, so on and so forth. Which means that the best way to memorize information is to get stronger neurons. Now that we know this information, how do we go about doing that? Well, the common answer to that is to go over flashcards. Let's see that theory in principle. Day before your test, you pull out your big batch of flashcards, you're going over them and over them and over them and over them until all of a sudden, bam, have the entire test memorized. Take the test the next day, you remember everything, you ace the test, perfect. Let's flash forward another 6 weeks for the final exam. You take out your flashcards for all the new stuff, review the information again and again and again and again. You sit down preparing for the best, and all of a sudden, all that information's gone from the prior test. What happened? Well, my friend, you did successfully strengthen the neurons in your head, but unfortunately, the neurons weren't very well connected to each other. When you review flashcards or just try to memorize the answers on a test, you're not creating a very good system of memorization. It's not that the neurons that you've just created are dull or weak, it's that they're not connected very well. And if the neurons aren't connected to a very good system, then, well, why would you bother remembering them? So the solution to this is, of course, make good connections. How do you go about doing that? Well, the biggest part, the cornerstone to everything that you need to learn for the exam, should ideally be right on the syllabus. Check your class objective. That's where you start. Every other piece of information should not be something that you have to memorize in order to take the test. It should be, how can I best utilize this information to complete the class objective? Let's think about an English class, for example. The objective of the class is to analyze and communicate your thoughts about media. So, how do you go about doing that? Well, you gotta start out by reading the book that you're talking about first, memorizing certain facts, seeing how all of that connects to a theme, so on and so forth. Now that you have a goal that you're looking for while you're studying, everything else becomes easier. Just like how we have a class objective, there could be sections in the class that you could consider to be key concepts. If you're able to figure out exactly what these key concepts are and how they tie back to the main objective and how you can continue to utilize them later in the course, you are well on your way to becoming a great studier. So, how do you keep track of all this information? Mind maps. Whenever I say mind maps to people, they immediately think of starting at the center and then working your way out. Now that's certainly an effective type of mind map, but mind maps, the reason that they're such an effective studying tool is that you can use them however you want. It's the way that your brain operates, and it doesn't necessarily have to be starting at the center and working your way out. It could be directional, it could branch off and have its own little topics going on simultaneously. There are so many ways you could format a mind map, it's insane. So, prior to the test, I recommend doing your best to make one. It doesn't have to be anything super foolproof. Just try to figure out where exactly the information that you need to know stands in the rest of the class. Now, of course, not all classes are built this way. You will have to memorize certain bits of information or else you're just going to forget it. But if you have this framework built, understanding the objective and the key concepts that you need to complete in order to continue the class, then you are way, way better off than someone who doesn't have that framework already established. Finally, and yes, I know this one's the most difficult out of all of them, get your sleep. Don't worry about studying overnight. I guarantee you getting a full 8 hours of sleep, or 7 or 6 even, will do you much, much better than if you stayed up all night studying.